Hello and welcome to Local Link Hub's podcast, a show with local impact for global change. For those who don't know, Local Link Hub is the Localization and Partnership Initiative for Terre des hommes. We are a global online platform and we provide free e-learning and capacity development resources for local and national NGOs. Our project is funded by the Somaha Foundation. I'm your host, Anike Vosch. I'm the Communications and Content Manager for Local Link Hub. And thank you for listening to today's episode, A Marathon of Trust, Local Voices Leading Change in Nigeria. Let's get started. In Nigeria, around 6 million people are in urgent need of assistance. Local organizations are often the best ones who understand these needs. Thanks to the efforts of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation and the localization approach of TDH, these organizations are now better equipped to respond to crises. Our podcast today is based on an internal presentation created for TDH staff. We will hear the voices of Stephen Oladipo, the Director of Rise to Inspire Africa Initiative, Julien Georges, Head of Delegation for Terre des hommes in Nigeria, and Moussa Ismail Bello, Terre des hommes Localization and Partnership Manager in Nigeria. Terre des hommes has been present in Nigeria since 2018, which means the organization is still relatively new to the country's complex humanitarian landscape. At the beginning of our podcast, Julien Georges, the head of delegation for TDH in Nigeria, explains the context that has created strong conditions for genuine localization.
When we're talking about northeast of Nigeria, at the moment we're talking about more than 6 million people that still need urgent assistance. And of course, as you all know, the humanitarian system and ecosystem is doing some drastic prioritization. When we're talking about Nigeria, we're talking about only 40% of those in needs that can be prioritized for humanitarian assistance in 2026. In the Northeast, we have more than 2 million people that have been internally displaced. So what does displacement mean exactly? For families, it means usually living in camps or host communities, most of the time for years, and being kind of stuck in garrison towns and IDP camps, with definitely reduced access to land, to livelihood opportunities, and that keeps people dependent on aid. That also exposes most vulnerable, including the children, to exploitation, sexual exploitation, but also attacks when going out for farming. At the same time, the humanitarian funding has sharply decreased in 2025, and this trend is definitely not going away. For us, that means harder choices, fewer people that we can reach, shorter assistance cycles, and more uncertainty for the people that we serve and the community that we want to support. And the consequences that we foresee for 2026 are shocking. In 2026, we're expecting to have, in the northeast part of the country alone, around 5.8 million people facing acute food insecurity during the lean season, and that's up from 4.6 million in 2025. We're also expecting to have 3 million children under 5 suffering from life-threatening malnutrition, and also obviously seeing a lot of protection risks increasing and negative coping mechanisms, and that includes abductions, forced recruitments for children, sexual violence, early marriage, child labor, and exploitations, simply for family to try to find a way to sustain and survive the situation. Obviously, that also means interrupted education for a lot of children within the place where they've been displaced. Facing the reduction in funding, the communities are already facing and asking what will happen when international aid scaled down. And for us, the question is, how would we continue serving the people with dignity and continuity when the resources decline? So what are we doing in Nigeria as an organization? We've been working in Nigeria since 2028, and we've opened the coordination office in Borno State in 2017, following the humanitarian crisis that started at that time. We're currently implementing 5 projects with a strong focus on child protection, but also education in emergencies in the Northeast, so in the Borno State. But we've also started working on child rights in the supply chain and in business, with a specific focus on cocoa farming. Throughout the years, we've developed a very strong expertise on education for displaced and conflict-affected children, and we implement this approach mainly through temporary learning spaces, school reintegration, teacher capacity building, and also with a strong connection with child protection components, including MHPSS services. We've also recently started working on gender justice with a specific focus on gender-based violence in the center of the country. In Nigeria, we have a very vibrant civil society network. When we look at the number of organizations representing in the national organization network, we're talking about almost 4,000 NGOs, community-based organizations, and also civil society organizations. Many of them reaching areas that international actors do not or cannot. When we're talking about the humanitarian response, we're talking about 90 local and national NGOs that are registered in the HRP against 36 NGOs. We also have national platforms such as PLR-CAP and the OCHA Pool Fund that provide technical resources, support for local capacity. So if we're talking about numbers or figures that can be a bit representative, the OCHA Pool Fund now is allocating almost 70% of its fundings directly to national NGOs, but that remains one of the only funding channels that fund directly national and local partners. And most of the time, they still rely on sub-grants rather than direct funding, and they're also meeting very heavy administrative requirements, have limited flexibility in funding, and navigate ongoing power imbalances between international and local actors. So with the context of shrinking resources and a need for reform in the leadership, local leadership is really essential. And this conversation is really central in Nigeria, not only as part of a global agenda, but as part of a concrete conversations that we have regarding the reset of the humanitarian system and governance. And we're facing very concrete questions, including what should be the roles of national NGOs in this revised governance? What is the role of the government? How can we ensure accountability and principal humanitarian work in the power dynamic between national actors and the government? And how can national NGOs also hold the government counterparts accountable within the humanitarian space? With these fewer resources and the shifting roles, national NGOs are really increasingly central to not only to governance and also to delivery. So our objective today was to speak about our PACLAC project because it really reflects a shift in how TDH can engage in localization efforts. In this project, TDH does not implement any activity directly. We do not coordinate partners or partners' work. We don't have any contractual link with the partners that we support. Instead, our role is really to support from the side, providing technical expertise, strengthening organizational capacities, and helping national NGOs to amplify their voices.
And what is this PACLAC project that the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation is running in Nigeria? And to be honest, it seems to be the enabler of localization there. We have Moussa Ismail Bello, Terre des Hommes Localization and Partnership Manager in Nigeria, talking about it.
Permit me to bring you a little perspective around project design. That is the PACLAC project. The meaning is protecting children, women, and youth affected by conflict through local actors in Borno State. Now, thanks to many years of collaboration and trust between SDC and TDH was invited into the conversation not as implementers but as supporting actors. Now, through a series of joint discussion with SDC and the national partners, It became clear that technical, organizational, and advocacy support would be critical to making the localization investment sustainable. TDH was therefore included as a technical partner with a clear non-implementing role. The final design reflects this shift in power and responsibility. And the final result was we had 3 distinct grant agreements with funding and leadership sitting, going directly to the national organizations, and TDH position as a supporting and enabling role. Now, despite the 3 different grant agreements, which one for each lead NGO, we have about 2 lead NGOs and 2 others who are sub-grantees for them, and 1 went for TDH. So despite these 3 different grant agreements, SDC involvement and leadership generated a single consortium-like dynamics across all partners. The core ambition is not just to run protection activities, that is the PACLAC project, but also to ensure that Nigerian organizations can lead, sustain, and scale high-quality child protection and GBV services over time. Now, TD's specific objective under this PACLAC project is to strengthen the organizational, technical, and strategic foundation of 4 national NGOs. This include their internal systems like safeguarding, human resource, financial management, but also strengthening the technical case management quality and supporting the partners in taking a stronger role in coordination and advocacy spaces. And some of the real outcome we are working towards is to see the partners' autonomy and sustainability, where local organizations are not just implementers of donor budget, but confident, credible actors who can engage the donors directly, influence systems, and also maintain quality services in the long run. To make our role clearer, we often describe our support under 3 complementary pillars. The first is the organization system. We work with each partners to understand and strengthen their internal foundation, safeguarding, HR, finance, meal, governance, through participatory organization capacity assessment and system diagnostic. Partners identify their own priorities, and we co-develop improvement roadmap. This was not just an audit, but a joint reflection process. And secondly is in the area of technical quality. We strengthen the quality of child protection and GBV programming through trainings, providing practical tools and mentoring. A key milestone was introducing the Child Protection Information Management System Plus to improve safe case documentation and data protection. Importantly, learning did not stop at training. We also followed up with case-based mentoring to embed practices into their daily work. And third, one of that pillar, or the third pillar, is the advocacy and strategic positioning, where we supported partners and local systems to grow in confidence and visibility, engaging more actively in coordination spaces, reflecting on advocacy priorities, and gradually strengthening their readiness to engage donors directly. A bit more about what we do on the PACLAC project. We strengthen and are still strengthening the technical quality in child protection and GBV. We did that throughout 2025, and also in 2026, we'll be expanding the support to additional areas of organizational life, always with partners leading the implementation, of course. So instead of delivering services ourselves, we focus on building their expertise. We facilitated case management training in Goza, in Bama, in Bogono. These are locations where the PACLAC projects are directly being implemented, with a strong emphasis on ethics, confidentiality, and safe documentation. One moment that stayed with our team happened during a role play in Goza, where a caseworker stopped midway group exercise and said, before I thought helping meant asking many questions quickly, but now I see that helping sometimes means slowing down and letting the child feel safe enough to speak. Now, this shift from task focus to child center is exactly the kind of change we are trying to support. And after the training, we didn't stop. We followed up with mentoring, working alongside partners on real cases and supervision challenges. That's where learning moved from theory into daily institutional practice. One of our partners later reflected on the broader impact of this support. Now I'm quoting the partner. He said, our staff strengthened their child protection and GBV case management skills and adopted child-centered approaches. So for us, this shows that localization is not only about who implements the activities, but about whether local organization grows stronger, more confident, and also more sustainable.
So until now, we learned that strengthening and supporting local organizations can sometimes be challenging. International organizations like Terre des Hommes must learn to step back and allow national organizations who are part of the daily life of the community to lead the field work. But becoming an organization that can receive direct funding from state donors such as the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation did not happen overnight. It was the result of a deliberate and long-term process that began in 2021. And the subject of this change was Rise to Inspire Africa initiative, established in 2016. So Rise to Inspire Africa initiative is a non-profit group that helps vulnerable people, especially women and children affected by conflict or disasters, in sub-Saharan Africa to become self-reliant by supporting their education, their health protection, and empowerment through partnership and community action. We have Stephen Oladipo, the director of Rise to Inspire Africa initiative, to speak about this journey.
So it will interest you to know that the journey to this funding started as way back as 2021. So SDC didn't just come out of the blue to fund us as an organization. So what they did was that they took us through a 9-month series of capacity development through the PLR CAP program. So they took us through that series of training where we get to learn across different domains: financial management, compliance, donor engagement, and the rest, right? Now, between 2021 down to 2024, we took out time to strengthen our own internal capacity, and we went out of our way to secure direct funding from the US government on 2 occasions. So this actually, made a level playing ground for us to be able to access the funding directly from SDC, and understanding that SDC have a funding model where you had to, bring in like a counterpart funding or stuff like that, right? They also understood too well that because we are national NGOs and we don't literally have, that large scale of funding as an organization and as institution, they paired us, and that was where the peering consortia actually came on board, where RIA with Rise to Inspire Africa initiative was paired with the CATAI, which is Center for Advocacy, and YIBD was paired with LABD. And the reason why this pairing was done was because of the fact that for CATAI and LABD, we were already accessing directly from the pool fund some good number of funding.
The organizational development and capacity strengthening of Rise to Inspire Africa initiative, or RIA, kick-started by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, was later continued by Terre des Hommes. TDH supported its national partner by strengthening the areas where RIA needed improvement, especially in organizational safety and security, as well as in child protection and gender-based violence case management. Stephen Oladipo continues the story of their NGO.
From our own perspective as an organization, and please permit me to quote the words of one of my mentors that says that capacity strengthening is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's not a one-off task, it's a continuous task. From our side, we view this partnership as something that represents what meaningful localization should look like, particularly in practice and not just funding of activities, but deliberately investing in our strength, in our confidence, and also in our systems as organization. We commenced this journey with a safety and security training, something we literally don't have before now. How do we ensure that staff are safe on the field? How do we ensure that staff are also safe and our assets and equipment are also safe in the office? So that was the launching point for us in this journey. Similar to that was also to mention that we actually had this strong community presence and commitment, quite frankly. However, like many other national NGOs operating in the northeastern part of Nigeria, we are still struggling with navigating how to fully align with international protection standard, looking at also strengthening our internal system and also engaging with donors. And this is what TDH actually did, working with us through this journey. The TDH actually supported us in terms of areas like in capacity strengthening our colleagues. And I think one thing that actually stood out for us is the fact that they took the training to us at the field level rather than we coming to the state capital. I think that's one of the biggest highlights for us because, our colleagues at the field level were trained on child protection and also, GBV case management. And for us, this significantly improve our staff competencies and also deepen our understanding and application of a survival center approaches to CP case management and even GBV case management. And more importantly to this is that it also strengthened our compliance with international safeguarding and protection standards across our field of implementation. Following the field capacity strengthening, we've also participated in a series of assessments from due diligence to technical capacity assessment, advocacy assessment, project cycle management assessment, and a couple of DEX review together with colleagues from TDH. And one strong thing that stood out for us in this assessment is the fact that it was not an imposition assessment. It was more of we doing self-assessment to even understand our systems very well, and that for us actually helps us to see how we are doing as an organization and what we needed to improve on again. I would also mention that one of the most transformative outcome of this support was the successful onboarding of our organization into the Child Protection Information Management System Plus. That's the primary CPIMS Plus. Before now, we never had the opportunity of, we actually been using the manual way of documenting case, which doesn't speak to confidentiality, which actually exposes some of our cases, to a lot of risks. But now that we have access, as a matter of fact, I was in Goza last Friday, where one of my colleagues was speaking confidently and saying, "Sir, I now understand how better to use the primary, thanks to the training, thanks to the session we had with Terre." And this actually, has helped us have some sort of like proper and stronger data management. We have seen significant improvement in how we manage confidentiality and also clearer accountability for us. And it has also, helped us make better and informed decisions when it comes to managing of cases. And this has also helped us to, improve our ability to track cases and also ensure timely referral and basically ensuring that we have a very strong and improved protection outcomes for our vulnerable children that we're working with. Beyond systems, beyond technical capacity development, TDH Nigerian delegation also shared high quality technical resources with us. These include manuals on positive parenting, psychosocial support tools, and education in emergency manuals. And not only that, we decided not to treat this as a project-specific material. Rather, we are institutionalizing them across our organizations and across our programming. And it is also helping us to, shape how we design and deliver our project, just not even within the PACLAC project, but beyond that. And it's also ensuring that we are building like some kind of like lasting effect on staff learning, program quality, and service delivery. I would also love to mention that another critical area of impact has been around donor engagement, and we've seen how the colleagues from the Nigerian delegations have been very, very deliberate in supporting our growth by sharing relevant funding opportunity with us through the local link hub. And they've also supported us in strengthening proposal development capacity. Interestingly, we are currently engaging with a couple of donors, and trust me, we are doing this with a lot of confidence, not just as implementers, but we are doing this as capable national partners who can design, manage, and account for high quality humanitarian programming. I would conclude by saying that if local organizations are genuinely supported, we are better positioned to deliver sustainable impact. We are better positioned to engage donors meaningfully, and we are better positioned to contribute meaningfully and significantly to the humanitarian system. Maybe I would also end with this by saying that by next week, TDH Nigeria has actually invited us to another series of training, which is going to be on project management. For us, we consider this a valuable addition to our learning journey as an organization, particularly as a youth-led organization that is still emerging.
Shifting the way TDH in Nigeria worked was not a simple task. For many years, the focus has been on direct implementation. Now the team had to learn something different, to step back, to trust the local partners, and to walk beside them as they grew stronger. It was a meaningful change, but also a challenging one, both emotionally and in the daily practice. Moussa Ismail Bello, the Localization and Partnership Manager of TDH Nigeria, shares what this transition truly felt like.
The approach of localization challenged us as well as our partner. One of the biggest mindset shift was moving from, activities done the way we should do them to how can we support partners to strengthen their own way of working. And that sounds simple, but in practice, it requires a lot of patience and humility. I remember moments where we saw gaps, for example, in documentation quality, safeguarding procedure, and our first instinct was to fix it ourselves. What localization meant stepping back and asking, how do we address this in a way that builds partners' capacity rather than replacing it? So tailored support also required more time and staff resources. Blanket training would have been easier and faster, but they wouldn't have addressed each organization's specific reality. So real accompaniment meant repeated visits, long discussions, adapting tools to each partner, work that is indeed slower, less visible, but more sustainable. And another challenge was balancing workloads. We have partners delivering life-saving services, but also engaging in system strengthening. So we have to be careful not to overburden them with too many parallel processes. And then there are ethical dilemmas. Localization does not mean lowering standard, of course. We had to define our red lines clearly, especially around safeguarding child protection principle, data confidentiality. When concerns arose, our role was not to blame, to engage transparently, provide corrective support, and ensure risks to children and survivors were not tolerated. So localization required us to hold two things at once: respect for local leadership and non-negotiable protection standard. Learning to balance those responsibly has been one of the most important internal journey in this project. And for some of other lessons we've learned, one would be how trust also changes the depth of engagement. When partners trust the process, they share real gaps, and that's when real strengthening happens. We also learned that participatory diagnostic create much more in ownership than external assessment. And mentoring, although slower, leads to deeper institutional change than one-off trainings. And most importantly, we learned that localization is not a shortcut and it's not a cost-saving exercise. It requires time, it requires skilled staff, and flexibility. But the payoff is stronger, more sustainable, and genuinely locally led system that continues long after project ends. And in this project, Terre, hommes, of course, step back from direct implementation, but not from responsibility. So we did not deliver activities ourselves, yes, And we do not lead operation on ground, yes, but we focus on upholding quality, accountability, and safeguarding while making sure that local leadership remain in the driver's seat. This balance is important. Stepping back does not mean disengaging, but it means using our role differently to support, to challenge, to enable, but not to take over. And that in practice is one of the most difficult but meaningful shifts in localization.
For local partners, in localization, the quality of collaboration makes all the difference. A partnership is truly meaningful only when national organizations are not treated as an afterthought, but are welcomed from the very beginning, from the design phase of the project. It means working together without a master-servant dynamic and building a relationship based on respect, trust, and shared purpose. And to close this podcast, we give the final word to someone who lived this journey directly. Stephen Oladipo, the director of RIA.
The idea of, allow me to use this word, master-servant relationship, right? We don't want to see those kind of experience. Rather, we want to see meaningful collaboration. And that's what we are already seeing, where we also contribute to the process. It's interesting to know that we contributed to the project design, like proposal design. So it was not like someone sits at the HQ level, designing proposal and sending it down to the local partners in the local community, but inviting the local partners from the design phase. I think that's one thing that I would encourage that we TDH should continue to do. Inviting the local partners from the design phase. And not only that, also inviting the local partners to participate in the baseline assessment. Yeah, because that way, again, it also continues to strengthen, because this is exactly what we did. And I believe that if we continue to go on in this direction, it will support a lot of local organizations, not only in Nigeria, but in any other countries that TDH is implementing. It's important to mention that investing in local leadership for us, I'll see it is not a charity, but a strategy. Yeah, this is my final message to TDH, that when you invest in local leadership, you're not investing in charity, but you're investing in strategy. And it is also important to say that when we as national partner grow stronger, the entire humanitarian development and peace nexus system becomes even more stronger.
My name is Enikő Vas, and you've been listening to a Local Link Hub podcast. We had help from Judit Németh-Almási. Thanks to all of you for listening, and thanks to our contributors today. Stephen Oladipo, the director of Rise to Inspire Africa initiative, Julien Georges, head of Delegation for Terre des Hommes in Nigeria, and Moussa Ismail Bello, Terre des Hommes Localization and Partnership Manager in Nigeria. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about the Terre des Hommes initiative, please visit our website at locallink.charthub.org. If you have any comments on the episode or want to share your thoughts, contact us via social media on Facebook or LinkedIn, or email us on locallink@charthub.org. Thanks for joining, and see you at our next episode.